Hi, welcome to the bathtub. This is the old masturbator wishing you a happy New Year 2023. We had a long siesta over Christmas, so we're getting back after a couple of weeks. I'm the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield, aka Green Lantern. A lot of people don't make that connection immediately, but it's obvious once you think about it. You've never seen me and the Green Lantern in the same place at the same time, and there's a reason for that. It can't be a new year until we use our traditional, which means it's Happy New Year in the world of bathing. This is the only show that's endorsed by Greta Thunberg, one of our heroes in the bathtub. We love Greta Thunberg because we recycle all of our jokes. Every joke we use in the bathtub, we reuse hundreds of times before we send them out to have them reconditioned. We have them reconditioned, we bring them back in, and we still use the same ones. Master Bather, Puppy Noir, every stupid joke we got. The post-tech decade. While the rest of the booktubers are slogging their way through the tech period of yesteryear, we've moved on to the pristine, non-tech decade. Pure mountain water, natural light, the cruel light of day. And that's us. All our old jokes refurbished for 2023. We're not going to change any of them, and that's why we're Greta Thunberg's favorite show. I'm going to do two short ones, very short ones as usual. Basically because I forgot all the stuff I wanted to talk about. Over Christmas, I was looking for some good Christmas books to read, and I had a kind of interesting reading. It was sort of good and sort of interesting. Many of us as kids. We were 14. This was the set I read when I was a kid. Read the Tolkien books. I remember one Christmas, like when I was 14, I got these for Christmas because I'd asked for them, I think, and friends were reading it. And I read them all like over Christmas holiday. Great period of reading. I never left my basement. I lived in the basement. They wouldn't let me in the rest of the house. I used to literally live in the garage next to the car. And I read those things over like 6-8 days. I loved those books. So shortly after, I remember seeing these books. You guys have probably seen these. Americans have seen this set of my old Americans. And this is called the Gormenghast trilogy. They called it a trilogy because the trilogy of Tolkien was so hot that they wanted to sell lots of trilogies. And Ballantine, we've talked about my love for Ballantine books. Just the most beautiful books, I think, ever published in terms of paperbacks. This is the whole series. This is a guy named Bob Pepper did these wraparound covers. TITUS GROAN is the first volume of the series, and then it wraps around. That's why it's a wraparound cover. Lots of redheads because there's a lot of redheads in this kind of old aristocratic dynasty. This is the the second one, Gormenghast, Volume 2. And look at that beautiful book. I mean, even if I didn't like the books, and you would want to have these books in your house. And finally, the third volume was published posthumously, and I want to say that some of the New Worlds crowd was involved in helping this get republished. They certainly had something to do with publishing parts of this. And it was Langdon Jones, I want to say, and Michael Moorcock was probably involved in getting this. After Mervyn Peake was dead, they pretty much had this pretty much completed novel, which they arranged to have published, TITUS Alone. Anyway, I have a kind of long and it's a slightly complicated relationship to these books. So when I got them as a 14-year-old, a 15-year-old, thinking I was going to get the Hobbit again, I got kind of I thought there was some amazing stuff in the books, and I remember getting bogged down, and I don't think I finished the first one. And about 10 years ago at Christmas, I finally got down and read TITUS GROAN. This is the first volume of the trilogy. Again, it's not really a trilogy. You supposedly can read them all individually, though this is all I've read. And I read the whole book, and I think that the first half of the book was completely enchanting. The first half of the book is extremely impossible. It's just a beautiful book. It's very difficult to summarize. I'll give you a quick summary as best I can. But anyway, I read through it, and then it slowly starts to kind of get bogged down. He goes off. He's not really Peake was mainly an artist, and you can see a lot of his art in this book. He did lots of these kind of pencil sketches for all the characters. Oh, these are some of I don't want to bend my back. That's Lady Fuchsia. Her name's Fuchsia, and I think that's the steer pike or the doctor. I can't remember. And these beautiful, beautiful black and white sketches. pencil or chalk, I don't know. Gorgeous. It's really worth having this series for the art. And I guess lots of additional art copies of the art have come through over the years. There's a really inexpensive edition of this on Kindle. Each volume's like $2, and I think it has a lot of these black and white illustrations included. So there's a lot of kind of imperfect knowledge of Mervyn Peake. I don't recall too much about him. He said he was mainly an artist. He was raised in China. He was raised in somewhere in the countryside. I think his father was a doctor or a civil servant. I can't remember. And he spent a lot of his life kind of as a foreigner in a foreign land, and came back to England. And he went to school. I think he went to Dulwich College in London, and was a friend of Graham Greene. Was a big fan of his work, and Graham Greene had great taste. He was always liked good books. So Mervyn Peake had these, and over his lifetime he wrote a few novels. These were the biggest and the most famous of them, and died fairly youngish, before he'd finished TITUS, GROAN, and then there was going to be a fourth volume. Okay, now I'm going to give a quick summary, and a very imperfect summary for those who love it. TITUS, GROAN is the central character who's a baby who's born literally in the opening pages of this book. He's the baby, the child of the Gormenghast castle dynasty, the GROAN family, some family that seems to live for thousands of years in this castle, which seems to be thousands of years old. The castle also seems to be miles and miles across. It's huge, and just it's been part of this some sort of village. And it's described, and as you travel through the chapters, you're traveling through these enormously, beautifully written, detailed, descriptive passages of this macabre, gothic, huge, impossibly huge castle. Now that's almost the entirety of anything fantastic that happens in it. There's very little witchcraft in it after that. Maybe none. I can't remember. There is. Lots of fantastic visual stuff, just beautiful visual stuff. There's a couple of I think the aunts of TITUS, GROAN, the baby. TITUS, GROAN is born in it, and at the end it goes to about a year, I think, a year or two, and then there's a ceremony at the end of the book. And I don't think he ever gets beyond being a toddler, and he has no real presence in the book except to be the inheritor of this dynasty. He's the most passive central character I've ever read. I've never read a book titled after a central character who has almost nothing to do with the plot, exerts almost no influence on the plot, does nothing, probably speaks almost nothing, and yet all these things happen around him. And in this giant castle, there's a character comes along. I want to say the closest relationship I can think of is not Tolkien. Mervyn Peake was a big fan of Dickens, and it does feel Dickensian on kind of hallucinogenics. It has all the kind of beautiful, funny, complicated humor of Dickens and the kind of exaggeration of all these weird characters. But it takes place in this fabulous castle. I think his name's Steerpike. I can't remember the bad. There's a bad guy in this who, in the beginning, he's sort of a bad guy. He works for a big fat cook. I forget the cook's name already. It was, anyway, it doesn't matter. Some big swelter, I want to say. It's a big, huge, fat cook who's just kind of a mean bastard. This gigantic kitchen. Again, and Steerpike, at the birth of TITUS, GROAN, starts to manipulate his way into the confidences of these aunts and to do things to try to make himself powerful in this new world that's coming about as this young boy is born. And the father and the parents of TITUS, GROAN are kind of crazy, aristocratic nuts. And this kind of horrible things happen to the father over the course of the book. The greatest parts of the book are these opening 100 pages in which Steerpike is, I forget why he does it. He's running through the castle for some reason. He has to run away. I think the cook is trying to beat him up or something. I forget. And he jumps out a window and he climbs these huge walls on the outside of this castle. It's one of the most visually beautiful passages I've ever read. He's climbing this gigantic, all these roots and all these vines, and he sees growing out of the castle this enormous tree. There's a whole room that is just roots for this tree. and this gigantic tree growing out of the back of the castle. And he meets the ants, the crazy red-haired ants at one point. He climbs to the top, and he sees basically, he calls it a sky of tiles. The top of this castle is so huge, it looks like a sky. And he travels around, then he climbs in, he meets Lady Fuchsia, the sister of TITUS GROAN. And that's my favorite part of the book, is the whole first half of the book. And then it develops into some interesting kind of stories and little offshoots of the stories, particularly of the wet nurse who goes off to a home and has two men trying to kill each other over her, etc. I don't want to say too much more. What I will try to say is that it does have long passages. There's a fire scene, for example, which is set up for a long time. And the actual scene goes on really long. And at the end of the book, there's two or three very, very long passages that kind of lost my interest when I was in them. But then all the individual scenes and the characterizations of the characters and the visuals of the book are so amazing. What is amazing is that every single page of this book is poetry. Yeah, even when the book doesn't quite work, every sentence is a writer who's using his brain and finding ways of seeing things, and looking at things, and describing things that I haven't seen anyone actually do it that way before. I'm just going to give you a quick passage before I send you home. This is 208 in my section, and I just want to give a little description of the castle at one point of the year, in autumn. He does some beautiful descriptions of autumn. Autumn returned to Gormenghast like a dark spirit re-entering its stronghold. Its breath could be felt in forgotten corridors. Gormenghast had itself become autumn. Even the denizens of its fastness were its shadows. Every sentence is an idea and a visual idea. The crumbling castle, looming among the mists, exhaled the season, and every cold stone breathed it out. The tortured trees by the dark lake burned and dripped, and their leaves, snatched by the wind, were whirled in wild circles through the towers. The clouds mouldered as they lay coiled, or shifted themselves uneasily upon the stone sky field, sending up wreaths that drifted through the turrets and swarmed up the hidden walls. I'm going to leave it at that. Every paragraph is comparably beautifully written. What I started to say was I read this about 9 years ago in London, one of my last Christmases in London. I enjoyed it, and I felt a little let down, and I always wanted to go back and read the whole trilogy. And so this Christmas I sat down and gave this a try again and enjoyed it and was frustrated by it for all the same reasons. I'd wanted to read the whole trilogy, but I kept thinking I couldn't remember the first book. I couldn't remember anything that had happened in it. And so I reread it, and then I still haven't gotten to Gormenghast, but maybe next Christmas. I don't know. Gormenghast I have heard is the best of the trilogy, but there may be disputes on that. Okay, happy bathing. That was the most fun and pointless and enjoyable choice for my reading for Christmas. I had nothing. It didn't have any. I didn't have to write anything about it or think about it. I just tried to have a good time, and through most of it, I had a great time. Okay, happy bathing. We recycle all of our jokes, every single joke.